in the heart of Manila, where the streets buzzed with jeepneys and the scent of morning pandesal drifted through narrow alleys, lived a humble father named Reuben and his young son. Every dawn they woke before the city roared to life, sitting outside their small wooden house to sing softly as the sky shifted from darkness to light, their voices carrying through the neighborhood like a gentle hymn of hope. Even though their home was small and their life was difficult, there was a warm strength inside those walls, a bond formed not only by blood but by music, a shared dream that quietly grew between them with every note they practiced. Reuben had been a tricycle driver for most of his life, weaving through Manila's chaotic streets with determination etched into his tired eyes. Each day he fought the heat, the noise, and the exhaustion, all so he could give Elias a chance at a better future. Yet no matter how drained he felt when he returned home, the moment he heard Elias humming a melody, the weariness melted away. Music was their sanctuary, their escape, the one place where poverty and problems couldn't reach them every night. The two would sit by their creaking window, singing harmonies that echoed against the rusted rooftops, dreaming secretly of stages far beyond the city they called home. One monsoon evening, rain hammered against the tin roof like 1,000 tiny drums, and the power went out, leaving their home bathed in candlelight. Elias was scrolling through videos on an old, cracked phone when he stumbled across an announcement for international AGT auditions. His eyes widened with excitement as he ran to Reuben, waving the phone like it was a treasure map leading to their destiny. Reuben laughed gently, at first thinking it was impossible for two ordinary people like them to reach such a prestigious stage. But when he saw the fierce belief shining in his son's eyes, something inside him awakened, a flame that had been quiet for far too long. They recorded their audition video in their tiny living room, standing beside a shaky electric fan, using a cheap microphone that worked only when held at the right angle. Reuben felt embarrassed at the simplicity of their setup, but Elias reminded him that AGT searched for heart, not luxury. After several attempts, marked by laughter and small mistakes, they finally captured a performance that felt pure and honest. With trembling hands, they submitted the application, whispering a quiet prayer into the night air, not knowing if anyone on the other side of the world would ever see their video. Weeks passed, each day filled with long shifts and soft, nighttime rehearsals, and they began to forget about the audition entirely. Then one hot afternoon, as Reuben parked his tricycle and wiped sweat from his forehead, he suddenly heard Elias shouting his name. From across the street, neighbors turned to watch as the boy ran to his father with tears streaming down his face. Breathlessly, he said the words that made Reuben freeze in disbelief. They had been selected for an in-person audition in America. In that moment, the world seemed to spin slower, like time was holding its breath for their dream. The journey to America was filled with firsts. First plane ride, first time above the clouds. First time stepping into a world so different from the familiar chaos of Manila. Elias sat by the window in awe, watching the vast sky below them, while Reuben clutched the armrest, nervously praying silently as the plane soared higher. When they landed in Los Angeles, the cold air stung their cheeks. The towering buildings made them feel small, and the busy streets felt like a new universe. Yet beneath all the excitement, they carried a quiet fear, afraid of failing, afraid of being judged, afraid of not belonging in such a grand world. On the day of their AGT audition, they stood backstage surrounded by dancers, magicians, and singers from around the globe. Talent used from every corner, and anxiety crawled across Reuben's skin like cold wind. Noticing his father's trembling hands, Elias squeezed them tightly and whispered, "We belong here, Papa, because we came with heart." His words grounded Reuben instantly, reminding him that their strength was not in perfection, but in authenticity. When their names were finally called, they stepped onto the stage, with their hearts beating like drums, trying to look braver than they felt. The blinding lights hit them as they faced a massive audience and 4 iconic judges, including the one man Reuben feared and admired the most, Simon Cowell. After introducing themselves with humility, they prepared to sing. Reuben looked at Elias, and in his son's steady gaze, he found courage. The music began softly, and their voices intertwined like threads of gold. The theater fell into a deep hush, the emotion in their performance wrapped around the audience like warm light, pulling them into a story of struggle, love, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. Each note carried a piece of their past, every harmony a glimpse of their bond. When the final note hung in the air, like the last breath of a prayer, Silence washed over the room for a moment that felt eternal, and then the audience erupted, cheers crashing like waves against the walls. Judges leaned forward, visibly moved. Tears glimmered in unexpected eyes. Simon Cowell stared at them with a softness rarely seen, and after a long pause he stood, walked to the front of the desk, and slammed his hand onto the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, filling the stage with shimmering light. Elias dropped to his knees crying, while Reuben pulled him into a tight embrace, their bodies shaking from the emotional shock. Confetti stuck to their hair, their clothes, their faces. Yet they barely noticed as the judge, who once intimidated them, now walked up with a warm smile, telling them that what they had given was not a performance, but a gift, a moment of truth, and heartfelt connection that the world needed. For Reuben and Elias, that moment felt like destiny unfolding, like the universe finally answering every silent prayer they had whispered into the night. Their AGT journey became a whirlwind of rehearsals, interviews, and endless messages from fans who found strength in their story. Even though they didn't win the entire season, they won hearts across the world. People fell in love with their humility, their authenticity, their father-son bond. When they returned to Manila, their community welcomed them like heroes. Neighbors hung banners. Children ran toward them with excitement, and families thanked them for representing Filipino strength. Their simple home was filled with laughter, music, and a sense of pride that felt sweeter than any trophy. Opportunities opened one after another. Recording labels reached out. Local and international shows invited them to perform, and foundations asked them to attend charity events. Reuben used their small earnings to renovate their home, strengthening walls that had weathered too many storms, adding a small music room where they could practice without worrying about leaks or noise. For the first time in years, he didn't have to drive his tricycle to survive. Yet he kept it parked proudly in the yard as a reminder of their journey, a symbol of every mile he drove for his son's future. They wrote songs inspired by their struggles, pouring memories into melodies that carried the smell of rain on tin roofs, the sound of laughter between hard days, the echo of dreams whispered under dim candlelight. People around the world streamed their music, finding comfort in their sincerity. Children sang their songs at school events. Parents used them as bedtime lullabies. Older listeners played them during moments of reflection. Reuben and Elias realized they were not just entertainers anymore. They had become storytellers, carriers of hope, voices for those who felt unseen. As time passed, the bond between father and son deepened in ways neither could fully describe. They became partners in purpose, walking side by side through fame, pressure, and expectations. They supported each other through the exhaustion of travel, the stress of balancing school and performances, and the emotional weight of inspiring millions. Yet in every moment they remained grounded, never letting applause or cameras distract them from the truth that made their journey meaningful. It was not fame that gave their lives value. It was love, unity, sacrifice, and the courage to believe in the impossible. One quiet evening, as they sat outside under the Manila night sky, Reuben looked at Elias with deep emotion and said that life would continue to offer new paths, some easy, some difficult. But whatever changes came, their music would remain their compass, their anchor, their way of remembering where they came from and who they were meant to be. Elias nodded softly, understanding the depth of his father's words, promising that he would carry their story forward with humility, sincerity, and the same fire that once LED'd them from an wooden house to a global stage. Here is the full continuation, in the same storytelling style. Same commas instead of dots, 7 to 8 lines per paragraph. And this section will push the total story to around 5,000 words and close the topic completely, giving it a powerful emotional ending. As the days passed, and the Manila father and son returned home, life felt completely transformed. The quiet neighborhood they had lived in for years, suddenly buzzing with curiosity and inspiration. People stopping them on the street, asking for photos, thanking them for bringing honor to the community. And everywhere they went, they felt the warm embrace of those who had silently rooted for them for so long, their small home suddenly becoming a symbol of possibility for every dreamer who feared their dreams were too small, too unreachable, or too unrealistic. The father felt something changed deep inside him, a renewed sense of purpose flowing through his every breath, as if the stage lights of a GT still followed him into the modest corners of his life, guiding him reminding him that he was now responsible, not just for his son's dreams, but also for the hope of countless parents who saw their own sacrifices reflected in him. And he walked with a quieter confidence now, a sense of gratitude that made every morning feel brighter, every challenge feel lighter. The boy, meanwhile, woke up each day with a new sparkle in his eyes, carrying a joy so big it couldn't be hidden every step he took, bursting with the memory of Simon Cowell slamming that golden buzzer, of the confetti falling like a magical rainstorm, of the audience rising to their feet, cheering his name, cheering their bond, cheering the courage of a child who turned stage fright into fire. And he realized that the world was bigger than he ever imagined, yet somehow felt more reachable. People from different parts of the Philippines started messaging and sending voice notes to them, telling stories of their own struggles, talking about how the performance made them cry, made them feel less alone, made them pick up a dream they had buried years ago. And the father and son listened to each message, with humility, understanding deeply that their golden buzzer moment wasn't just entertainment. It was a reminder that love, when expressed honestly, can do extraordinary things. When they visited their old music teacher, the man looked at them with tears in his eyes, unable to speak at first, overwhelmed by pride. Remembering the shy little boy who used to forget lyrics and hide behind his father. Remembering the young father who worked late shifts and still attended every practice, even when he had no energy left. And he held their hands tightly, telling them that the world needs more people who choose their dreams instead of their fears, more parents who choose presence instead of excuses, more children who choose courage instead of comfort. On the weekends, father and son started performing small, free shows around Manila, not for fame, not for money, but to give back to the people who raised them, supported them, believed in them, long before any international stage did. The joy they felt singing for their own community was deeper than applause, deeper than recognition. Because this time, it wasn't about proving themselves. It was about sharing the gift that had changed their lives, sharing the light that had been given to them so generously. One evening, as they watched the Manila sunset paint the sky with deep oranges and fading gold, the boy rested his head on his father's arm and said that he thought happiness only came from achieving big things. But now he knew it came from doing things with love, doing things with family, doing things with honesty. And the father placed his hand on his son's shoulder, whispering that dreams were important. But the heart behind those dreams was what truly created miracles, what truly moved people, what truly lasted. As AGT invited them back for the live shows, they prepared with more discipline than ever before, practicing until their voices blended, like water and wind, rehearsing each step, each note, each breath, knowing that this time the world would be watching even more closely, expecting something extraordinary. Yet instead of fear, they felt excitement, because they were no longer singing to impress, they were singing to express, to remind the world that the strongest performances aren't about perfection, they're about truth during their next performance. The lights dimmed, the crowd hushed, and the father and son stood there holding hands, feeling the energy of the room shift as their harmonies filled the stage, their voices carrying stories of sacrifice, of nights without sleep, of meals skipped, of dreams held tightly during storms and struggles. And when they finished, the silence before, the applause was so thick and powerful that it wrapped around them like a warm blanket. And then the audience erupted, louder than the first time, louder than they ever imagined, their cheers rising like a wave. The judges looked emotional, even Simon, who rarely showed such softness, wiping the corner of his eye before speaking, telling them that what they had was bigger than talent, bigger than performance, that they carried a message the world desperately needed, a reminder that love within families can heal, rebuild, and uplift, that their bond was their superpower. And they stood there trembling, overwhelmed, realizing that they didn't just make it to the live shows, they made it into people's hearts, in a way no trophy could capture. As the competition continued, they didn't win the entire season, but they won something far more meaningful, something no prize money could ever match. They won millions of hearts, millions of minds, millions of people who saw themselves in their fight, their honesty, their devotion, their togetherness. And when the show ended, they walked off the AGT stage hand in hand, smiling with peace instead of disappointment, because they knew that victory wasn't defined by a title. It was defined by the journey they had lived together. When they returned home for the final time, the night air of Manila felt softer. The city lights seemed kinder, the world felt bigger yet more welcoming. And their story had become woven into the dreams of other families, other parents, other children. And everywhere they went, they carried not just memories of a golden buzzer moment, but the deeper truth behind it, that a father's love and a child's courage can create miracles that echo far beyond a single performance, far beyond a single stage, far beyond a single life. And so their journey ended, not with a trophy, not with confetti, not with a final round victory, but with something infinitely greater, a legacy of hope that would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling, long after the applause faded, long after their names stopped trending, a legacy built from love, from resilience, from dreams that refused to die. And in the hearts of millions, the Manila father and son would forever remain a reminder that when family stands together, the impossible becomes beautifully, undeniably possible.